Nature is in more trouble now than at any time in human history, with extinction looming over 1 million species of plants and animals, experts say. That's the key finding of the United Nations (UN) first comprehensive report on biodiversity, the variety of plant and animal life in the world or in a particular habitat. Today's report says species are being lost at a rate tens or hundreds of times faster than in the past. Any leading experts has said that humanity is throttling the planet and, perhaps, its own future. More than 500,000 species on land lack sufficient habitat for long-term survival and are likely to go extinct, some within decades, and the oceans are not any better off. Researchers caution that the problem starts with people, but that it's not too late to fix it. Conservation scientists from around the world convened in Paris to issue the report, which exceeded 1,000 pages. The Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, IPS, included more than 450 researchers who used 15,000 scientific and government reports. The report summary had to be approved by representatives of all 109 nations. Humanity unwittingly is attempting to throttle the living planet and humanity's own future, said George Mason University biologist Professor Thomas Lovejoy, who has been called the godfather of biodiversity for his research. He was not part of the report. The biological diversity of this planet has been really hammered, and this is really our last chance to address all of that, Professor Lovejoy said. Some nations hit harder by the losses, like small island countries, wanted more in the report. Others, such as the United States, were cautious in the language they sought, but they agreed we're in trouble, said Dr. Rebecca Shaw, chief scientist for the World Wildlife Fund, who observed the final negotiations. This is the strongest call we've seen for reversing the trends on the loss of nature, Dr. Shaw said. The findings are not just about saving plants and animals, but about preserving a world that's becoming harder for humans to live in, said Sir Robert Watson, a former top NASA and British scientist who headed the report. We are indeed threatening the potential food security, water security, human health and social fabric of humanity, Sir Robert told the Associated Press. He said that poor and less developed countries bear the greatest burden. Fighting climate change and saving species are equally important, the report said, and working on both environmental problems should go hand in hand. Both problems exacerbate each other because a warmer world means fewer species, and a less biodiverse world means fewer trees and plants to remove heat, trapping carbon dioxide from the air, Professor Lovejoy said. The world's coral reefs are a perfect example of where climate change and species loss intersect. If the world warms another 0.9 degrees Fahrenheit, 0.5 degrees centigrade, which other reports say is likely, coral reefs will probably dwindle by 70% to 90%, the report said. at 1.8 degrees Fahrenheit, 1 degrees centigrade, the report said. 99% of the world's coral will be in trouble. At least 680 species with backbones have already gone extinct since 1600. The report said 559 domesticated breeds of mammals used for food have disappeared. More than 40% of the world's amphibian species, more than one-third of the marine mammals, and nearly one-third of sharks and fish are threatened with extinction. The report relies heavily on research by the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, or IUCN, which is composed of biologists who maintain a list of threatened species. The IUCN calculated in March that 27,159 species are threatened, endangered or extinct in the wild out of nearly 100,000 species biologists examined in depth. That includes 1,223 mammal species, 1,492 bird species, and 2,341 fish species. Nearly half the threatened species are plants. Scientists have only examined a small fraction of the estimated 8 million species on Earth. The report comes up with 1 million species in trouble by extrapolating the IUCN's 25% threatened rate to the rest of the world's species and using a lower rate for the estimated 5 million species of insects, Sir Robert said. Outside scientists, such as Professor Lovejoy and others, said that's a reasonable assessment. The report gives only a generic within decades time frame for species loss because it is dependent on many variables, including taking the problem seriously, which can reduce the severity of the projections, Watson said. We're in the middle of the 6th great extinction crisis, but it's happening in slow motion, said Conservation International and University of California Santa Barbara ecologist Lee Hanna, who was not part of the report. The report was careful not to refer to a 6th mass extinction because its numbers do not come close to the 75% rate of past extinctions, Sir Robert said. The report goes beyond species. Of the 18 measured ways nature helps humans, the report said 14 are declining, with food and energy production noticeable exceptions. The report found downward trends in nature's ability to provide clean air and water, good soil and other essentials. Habitat loss is one of the biggest threats, and it's happening worldwide, Watson said. The report projects 15.5 million miles, 25 kilometers, of new roads will be paved over nature between now and 2050, most in the developing world. Many of the worst effects can be prevented by changing the way we grow food, produce energy, deal with climate change, and dispose of waste, the report said. that involves concerted action by governments, companies, and people. Individuals can help with simple changes to the way they eat and use energy, said the co-chairman of the report, ecological scientist Joseph Sattel of the Helmholtz Center for Environmental Research in Germany. That doesn't mean becoming a vegetarian or vegan, but balancing meat, vegetables and fruit, and walking and biking more, Sir Robert said. We can actually feed all the coming billions of people without destroying another inch of nature, Professor Lovejoy added. Much of that can be done by eliminating food waste and being more efficient, he said. Tom Oliver, professor of applied ecology and leader for ecology and evolution, University of Reading, said of the report, "This highlights how we failed in the 2010 global target to halt biodiversity loss, and again in the revised 2020 target to do the same." As our global impacts on the natural world continue to accelerate, we cannot afford to fail a third time. We need governments to develop strong policies to tackle the impacts of intensive agriculture, as well as better quantifying overseas impacts.